Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Elizabeth. I am glad to have you here. Thank you for stopping by here. I hope you remain here. Oh, by the way, before I go too fast, I want to tell you guys to please turn on your notification after you have subscribed, because I realized that people aren't getting my videos because their notification is not on. So please do that before we get into this video. So for today's video, I am going to be talking about the Daniel fast and why we fast as believers, and how is the Daniel fast different from every other fast, and what do I even eat during the Daniel fast? Will I be able to survive a Daniel fast if I am someone that loves my meat and my carbs and every of those good stuff? So I am going to be sharing a little bit about my experience when I did the Daniel fast. And by the way, currently my church is also doing the Daniel fast. And I figured this is actually the perfect time to just put something out there regarding the Daniel fast. And let's jump right into it. So when doing the Daniel fast, there are some things that we cannot eat. And where did the Daniel fast even come from? It's from the book of Daniel, chapter 10, verse 2 and 3. So before I go into that scripture, I also wanted to mention that in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, Daniel did the fast for 21 days. However, I've also seen that people do the fast for 10 days, and at different times. So I went back to read the book, and then I realized that we could actually say that the Daniel fast appears twice in the book of Daniel, because in chapter 1 of Daniel, when the king's messenger had come to Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and had spoken to them about the king wanting them to be recruited into his army or something like that. And he had told them that, the king wanted them to be separated from every other young man. Like, they unpicked some young men, and the king wanted them to be separated from those people and fed the choicest food, the best wine, the best of the food that grew in Babylon. And scripture says in Daniel 1 verse 8 that Daniel purposed in his heart not to defile himself with the king's delicacy. So what Daniel did was, he told the king's messenger and said to him, "Yeah, we're excited that, the king's thinking about us. However, we want to request that this was Daniel speaking, saying that he doesn't want to defile. Scripture says that he had purposed in his heart not to defile himself. So the way he tendered that to the messenger was, I do not want to eat the meat and the what's it called, and the wine that the king is offering us. Can you test us and give us vegetables and water?" I think those were the exact words: vegetables and water. And feed us vegetables and water while you feed the other guys all of the king's best food, and see after the 10 days how, just make a comparison. And so the messenger was like, "Boy, do not put me in trouble, because I do not want you coming out after the 10 days that the king had requested that you guys be fed the choicest of the food in Babylon. I do not want you showing up after that 10 days and looking like you haven't been fed for 10 days, because I am not only going to lose my job, I would likely lose my life." And Daniel was like, "Just test us and see." So fast forward to after that time, Daniel was kept on this meal of vegetable and water for 10 days. And scripture says in that book as well that after the 10 days, that Daniel was looking fresher than the other guys that were on the same, that were in the same situation as him, which were the people that were fed the king's meal. So I believe that that piece of the book of Daniel is where the people, the people that do the 10 days of the fasting, that's where they pick it from. Because I also realized that in the same book of Daniel, chapter 10, they actually did not mention the exact food that Daniel was eating. The scripture only said that Daniel did not feed, did not eat. I think I would put the scripture up here so I'm not misquoting it. But he was saying something about Daniel not eating maybe bread. He did not eat any meat, and he did not eat bread and all that. So, but that scripture did not exactly tell us what Daniel was eating. However, if you had been reading the book of Daniel from the beginning, you would know that in chapter 1, he had requested specifically for vegetables and water. So I guess it is safe to say that if he wasn't eating meat in chapter 10, then he was eating the same, meal plan as he did in chapter 1. So what do we eat when we are doing the Daniel fast? And what are we not supposed to eat when we are doing the Daniel fast? So I am going to show you some of the things that I did not eat when I was doing the Daniel fast, and some of the things that I ate when I did the Daniel fast. So when I did the Daniel fast, I did not eat meat, white rice, fried foods, no caffeine, no carbonated beverages, none of those things, no refined sugar, white flour, and all that. So I stayed specifically on whole grains, on legumes, on fruits, as well as on vegetables. And it was a little bit difficult at the beginning, but somehow I found grace, and I found, some recipes. I feel like for me personally, one of the hardest things when I was doing the fast, it wasn't necessarily the eating piece, it was shopping. Because while I was shopping, I had to ensure that the foods that I was buying, they weren't, they didn't have, preservatives and all of those things in them. So I would just encourage that if you're doing the Daniel fast, a great way to do the Daniel fast, to shop rather, is you could do a little research before you go into the store, because having to go into the store and start doing that while you're there could be daunting. So you could do a little research on the kind of preservatives there are actually some preservatives I discovered that are plant-based. So they aren't, they aren't chemicals and any of those things. They are just like plants, but they are used as preservatives in some food, which I think it's still okay, because I use some of those. So for my Daniel fast, I'm just gonna pull out. Yeah, for my Daniel fast, I stayed mostly on fruits, on apples, on vegetables. I ate a lot of broccoli, a lot of zucchini, tofu. Tofu was a lifesaver for me. I came across this this, what's it called now? Smoked tofu at Superstore. That tofu saved my life. It saved my life. And then Costco also has some fresh tofu as well that I was able to use as scrambled eggs in the morning. And then I also found like a taco from one of the stores. I believe it was at Superstore. I found a taco that was only corn and salt. So those things were like game changer for me. Apart from the fruit, I would eat fruit. I stayed mostly on fruits for snacks, and then I ate tofu and I ate brown rice as well for some of my meal. So why do we fast as believers? For me personally, I'd like to also believe that I'm speaking, for most believers out there. Fasting is not fasting without prayers. It is just hunger strike if you're not praying while you're fasting. So I would say that one of the most important piece of fasting is praying. You have to make sure that you're praying as much as you fast, as much as you're not eating. Fasting helps me to develop my spiritual strength. And I think it's the same for all believers. It helps us to develop our spiritual strength. It helps us to be spiritually alert, when your body is under, when your flesh is under. It's an intentional thing that, fasting is an intentional thing that once you're able to put your flesh under, your spirit becomes more alive. So every time you say no to that coffee from McDo, every time you say no to social media, because in our day now, by the way, fasting is not just for food. We could fast social media. You could fast every those things that just bring excessive pleasure to your flesh. Those things that once you deprive your flesh of them, you're able to tune your spirit. You're able to tune your mind to your spirit to know that, okay, there's a reason why I am not doing this. I am letting go of food. I am staying away from social media because I want my mind to be stayed on God. There's an intentionality that has to be with fasting. It's not just about food. It's about, yeah, food gives a lot of pleasure to our body, but beyond that there are also other things now that gives a lot of pleasure to us as humans. So how do we stay away from those things so we can give room for our spirit to flourish, our spirit to be alive, and our spirit to be tuned, to God, intentionally tune our spirit to God, so that we can know whatever the Lord's saying to us as a person, whatever the Lord's directing us to do, how to lead a more godly life, and all that. So for me, I said fasting helps me to be more alert in my spirit. We do not want to be convenient Christians. We do not want to lead the convenient Christianity where everything we do is just about us. Everything we do is just to please us, and everything we do is it just has to be convenient. If it's not convenient for me, then I cannot do it. Then we gotta check your Christianity, because most of the things that Jesus did weren't the most convenient for him, but he did them because his father commanded it. And I believe that that's the kind of Christians that we want to be, because we want to lead our life after the life of Jesus as well. So, oh yeah, I should read the scripture to you. There's a scripture in Romans that talks about whoever you present yourselves slaves of, to whom is your master, something like that. I think it's in Romans 6. It talks about if you feed your spirit, I think the summary of it is just that if you feed your flesh, the end result would be flesh and it will be death. But if you feed your spirit, the end result will be life eternal. So when we do fast, that's what we are doing. We are feeding our spirit. We're giving our spirit room to grow, room to expand, room to actually take over. Now, that's not to say that you do not eat at all, or like you do not feed your flesh food. That's not what I am saying, and that's not what that scripture is saying. So I'm hoping nobody misquotes or misunderstands that. I'm just saying that when you begin to feed your spirit, your flesh, so much pleasure, so much, like everything that your flesh desires, you give it, then before you know it, the flesh begins to become Lord over your spirit, which is not the way we want to live as believers. So I just thought I would come here to just share some of my experience with the Daniel fast, and I hope that this kind of inspires you to actually go back to the scripture and read it for yourself and learn from it. And if you are not a Christian, the Daniel fast recipe, if you're not a Christian and you're looking to eat clean, fast recipe is such a great one. It's basically just eating clean. But for us believers, even though we are eating clean, there has to be some spiritual intentionality to it while we do the fast. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would see if this video if it's too long, then I might not be able to include the piece of the recipe that I made. But if it's not too long, I'll just add it to it. And however, whatever the situation is, I would be posting that video as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Before you leave, I hope you do like, comment, and subscribe. And please turn on your notification to all so that you can see every time I post a new video. Do have a beautiful, beautiful, pleasant day, guys. Take care. Bye.